Hey everyone, you like the new theater? We just finished it. I'm gonna test it out. I'll just pull something off the internet at random and see what we get.
Okay, today we're going to talk about the myth of the good guy with a gun.
Man, Hollywood just ain't what it used to be.
And I know right now somebody's saying, Justin, it's not a myth, it just happened.
It happens every day. In fact, according to CDC figures that they didn't bother telling anyone about, and it had to be uncovered by independent researchers, it happens every 15 seconds.
That's how it goes down. The good guy kills the bad guy.
Actually, in most cases, the gun isn't even fired. Almost always, just brandishing the gun is enough to make the criminal give up and run away.
That's what we like to call anecdotal evidence. Here in my world,
well, in the real world, we call it statistics. Anecdotal would be like if you were to claim that, I don't know, vaccines made your hair fall out and made your eyebrows look that stupid.
We like to use real evidence, studies, statistics, maybe a bigger sample size than one shooting.
Then respond to the CDC data. Respond to the data from researchers like Gary Kleck that agree very well with what the CDC found.
There was a wonderful book. It's called On Killing. If you're interested in the subject, I highly recommend it.
Is it published in a peer-reviewed scientific journal? No? Then all your data is simply that some guy wrote a book.
It's a study of kills by the U.S. military in combat.
Well, what does that have to do with defensive gun by citizens? They happen in a completely different setting under completely different circumstances. The book he's talking about is actually called On Killing, The Psychological Cost of Learning to Kill in War and Society by David Grossman. Grossman relied on so-called studies from S.L.A. Marshall, which were basically just anecdotes, and Marshall has been completely discredited as a source of any integrity whatsoever. A review of Grossman's book by Robert Engen, published in the Canadian Military Journal, determined that these findings were, quote, inconsistent with what scientists and researchers tell us about human behavior, which is far richer and more complicated than Grossman acknowledges. Despite what killology teaches, an innate biological resistance to killing is neither simple nor consistently demonstrable in human beings. Of Marshall, Engen found, historians and researchers since the 1980s have been consistently demonstrating that Marshall did not have the evidence to back up his claims. Roger Spiller claimed that his ratio of fire numbers were an invention, and that Marshall had no use for polite equivocations of scholarly discourse. His way of proving doubtful propositions was to state them forcefully. Righteousness was always more important for Marshall than evidence. Other historians discovered that none of Marshall's aides and assistants could ever remember Marshall asking the troops questions during the group interviews that had anything to do with whether they had fired their weapons. There is no evidence that Marshall carried out the statistical legwork his claims imply. The paper concluded, it would appear, then, that Lieutenant Colonel Grossman's appeals to biology and psychology are flawed, and that the bulwark of his historical evidence, S.L.A. Marshall's assertion that soldiers do not fire their weapons, can be verifiably disproven. This guy's one and only source has no merit whatsoever.
This is a study of soldiers. These are people that volunteered to join the military. Obviously, these guys are killers, right? 4%. 4% of the U.S. combat forces are what the author termed natural-born killers. Now, there's a psychological makeup of these people. It even goes as far as to determine their family history, so on and so forth. It's an amazing book. It's an amazing study. Interestingly enough, the 4% psychological markers are almost identical to those that create a sociopath. So, 4% of people. U.S. combat troops are responsible for more than 50% of enemy KIAs.
I just know you're going to get to a point somewhere.
Basically, most people don't want to die. Most people don't run towards gunfire. Most people, if given the opportunity, will run rather than fight.
People who defend themselves with a gun do not do it because they want to fight. They do it because they aren't given much choice. And again, what almost always happens is that they just show the would-be criminal that they're armed. You seem to think it should work like in some Wild West show. That's not even an accurate depiction of the Old West.
We can't base policy decisions off of one act.
Mr. Strawman, give me a break.
In Texas, or the other few instances where it occurred.
Few instances? You know, if you had any research skills at all, you'd be able to check local news coverage all over the country in any given week and find example after example of this happening. In fact, I just did a quick search and I found a regular weekly podcast called Self-Defense Gun Stories, which covers this kind of thing all the time. So how much do you suck? And again, since what generally happens is the criminal is frightened off by the mere sight of the gun, most of these cases don't even make the news. Your whole argument is based on you sticking your fingers in your ears and going, does not, does not, does not.
We can't base it off of 4%.
4% of what? You haven't shown how your 4% figure relates to anything regarding defensive gun use by citizens.
So the idea that completely deregulating, or if there were just more of them, whatever, would result in people rushing headlong into gunfire to save the day is a little silly.
How much can a person take? Mr. Strawman, give me a break.
And right now the gun control side is cheering. They're like, ha, science is on our side. Not really. Because in the same study, 96% of people, combat troops, killed a little less than 50%.
Leaving aside the fact that none of this has anything to do with citizen DGUs, what does the number killed have to do with anything? Again, most of the time the criminal is scared away without the gun even being fired. You haven't even looked at these studies, have you?
Which is the exact situation that occurs in a mass shooting. So, when you're looking at it like that, more firearms present might actually alter the case, alter what happens. If the would-be victim is armed and feels he has no way out or she has no way out, people want to live. The same thing that stops them from charging headlong into gunfire is the same thing that's going to make them pull their weapon. Most people aren't killers. Most people don't have that psychological makeup. But when push comes to shove, very few people want to die.
Wow. Talking for almost 45 seconds without even making any kind of point at all. Did you even think through this video before you made it? Once again, I have to point to Davi Barker's analysis showing that when a mass shooter is stopped by an armed citizen, the average death toll drops from 14.3 to 1.8. Someone else who couldn't even bother to take 10 minutes to look this stuff up. Hey, thanks for watching. Please hit like and subscribe and keep these videos coming by donating, becoming a subscriber and getting special benefits, or even for free with airtime. And check out all the great content here, like this video selected just for you.